Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special lunchtime with Anna. I am airing tonight instead of tomorrow, and we'll rebroadcast it tomorrow as well. This was something that I really wanted to get out for all of you guys. Um, so, who I have here, he was actually on last night's meeting of the minds and answered a lot of questions for not only us panelists, but for the viewers that have watched since. And thank you for the good feedback on that, because what we try to do is reach everybody, all walks of life, so forth, so on. So, hi, ex-Warden Morales, if you could briefly introduce yourself and, your name, and I'll go ahead with the question.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. As you already know, I'm Jose Morales. I was born in New York City. I am a Puerto Rican American. I joined the Army in 1976. I did 23 years in the Army. Once I retired from the United States Army, I joined the Georgia Department of Corrections in 1999 in the month of July. I worked my way up through the ranks. I was a sergeant, lieutenant, a major, assistant superintendent, deputy warden, and then finally made warden. And I made warden in 10 years. I was the first Hispanic warden in the state of Georgia, which is a great accomplishment for us Latinos.
Yes. I love it.
And I recently retired in July of 2021. I was a warden at 5 different locations, and I finished my career as the warden of the HIMAC unit at Jackson, Georgia. I have a bachelor's degree from Columbus State University and a master's degree from the University of Phoenix in corrections leadership. So that's it there.
So, Mr. Morales, that's pretty awesome. Hey, I did not know you were Boricua. So, huepa to my Boricua family, Boricua brothers and sisters. I am also Boricua. I was born in Guayama, and my father was also in the military, retired Army, which leads me to always have love for the military, right? Because it's been our Puerto Rican people who have fought so much in the Army, but that's wars. But that's a whole different story. That's a whole different show.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big accomplishment list, right? Especially being Latino or Latina in the state of Georgia, because I have also dealt with the discrimination both ways. So I totally feel you on that, right? So some of these questions before we get started, they're going to be hard, Mr. Morales. So one thing that I've always gotten from you is when I watch you down the feeds of websites and stuff, groups, Facebook, I notice your transparency. So I am, I'm letting you know ahead of time, I am going to ask those hard questions because
not a problem.
They need to be asked. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
And please, if you guys have any questions for them, write them down. We'll get to them throughout the show as we can, but I do kind of have a list ready for them. And it might just be the question that you're asking for. We will ask questions at the end, or I will read all those questions at the end. Okay. Question 1. And you kind of answered that, but, maybe you can go more into detail. How did you get into the Department of Corrections? Walk the listeners through your timeline, which you kind of did already. But if there's anything that you missed that you think, okay, maybe they need to know this about me, you're free to answer.
Okay. When When I got out of the Army, um, there was a recruiter there at a job fair that I went to for the Department of Corrections. And so I liked the fact that he was wearing a uniform. I wanted to get into law enforcement, and I needed a job. So uh, I signed the application, I turned it in, I got the phone call, um, and then I started my career in July of 1999. Of course, I went to the academy. Um, as I worked my way through the ranks, I had that unique edge over the other folks that worked with me because I was in the military, and I knew how to work with men. I was raised in the streets of New York City, in Spanish Harlem, so I knew a lot about gangs. I myself am a former gang member, but that was back in my early youth. So I can relate to the offenders because I know, um, I'm from the streets. I'm not like the other wardens who grew up here in the South and that kind of thing. Not to say that the South is slow, but it's not New York City. And so they gave me an edge, and I knew the most important thing in prison is respect, respeto, and so I was able to give the inmates respect, and so I got it. I got it back, and so I was very successful in the fact that I got along with them, and they got along with me. Um, Now, some of them hated me because I was very strict, and I had to be in order to deal with 2,000 inmates who committed, everything from robbing the candy store to capital murder. So um, I had the edge in the fact that I could relate to them and they could relate to me. So I was a good communicator with them.
Absolutely. And that's interesting to know. So, I could imagine with you being coming from a military background, you expect structure, right? Because
Yes,
that's
structure and
what you
discipline.
had.
Yes.
Yes. Which I can relate to why some inmates would be okay with that, others might not be so okay with that, because some of them like structure. That's the truth. Um, Statistically, studies have shown that with some offenders that they prefer that. Now, um, let me go on to question two. Question two is, how much corruption, if any, did you see as you moved up in the ranks in your position in the Department of Corrections in the state of Georgia?
Okay. I'll give you several points of view in terms
Okay.
of corruption. Well,
Okay.
because the officers don't get paid a lot of money, some of them succumb to um, the becoming dirty. Now, if I'm
Okay.
an inmate and I need a cell phone, and I know that you're struggling with your rent, your car's broken down, I'm going to approach you and I'm going to offer you, $2,000 for you to bring me in a $30 cell phone. So, in those terms, the inmates can turn certain officers to become corrupt and make that quick money. In terms of uh, internal corruption, um, a lot of it doesn't really exist with the more senior individuals. Now, um, they have cliques, meaning, um, the senior folks, they're going to promote their friends. And sometimes they're not the very best suited for the jobs
For the
that they
job.
get promoted to. Now, I'll give you some examples. Mr. Ward did not come up through the ranks as security. He started out as a CEO for about a year, and then he went into counseling. I've got nothing negative to say about counseling. They're needed. They deliver the programs. They provide good counseling for the inmates, but they don't have a lot of experience in security. If you understand what I'm saying, dealing with inmates from all sorts of backgrounds, from all different gangs. So he's been promoting people from the care and treatment side who don't have a lot of interaction with the inmate other than programming and counseling, if you understand what I'm saying. So he's been promoting a lot of wardens who didn't have experience in dealing with inmates. And so that's one of the reasons he's created an environment that has so many homicides and suicides.
And that I was going to actually ask you that from the question that you just answered. Wouldn't that cause more of a problem within the prisons? Because now, doesn't it open the door for more corruption to happen in every possible way if that's the case?
Well, that's why you have an increase, because he was putting the wrong people in these prisons. Sorry, my dogs are barking.
Oh, no, it's okay. I got some too.
Who didn't really have a lot of experience in dealing with crisis. How to stop the cell phones from coming in and corrupting the prison system. If you allow a lot of drugs and a lot of cell phones, it's going to create a lot of issues with the gang members, because they want they want control. They want to make the money, and so whoever has them, they're targets in the prison system. Those are the ones that are targeted by the inmates, by the gangs. So if you're running the cell phone or the drugs, you're an easy target. And a lot of these wardens have never dealt with those types of situations. They know how to counsel, they know how to deliver programs, but they don't know the beans and bullets of running a prison, is what I'm trying to say. And so then you're putting the wrong people in charge, and then that's when the backfire comes to light. The increase in gang activity, the increase in violence, because you don't know how to deal with it, and that's why they become unsuccessful.
And so that there's so many guys. If you guys, or ladies and gentlemen, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to call 321-252-8084. If not, you can always type your comments, and I will gladly share them with everyone. We'll read it at the end, because I have an array of questions. That answer can go into so many more layers, because it kind of frustrates me, because obviously this is a lot of the problem in many ways that has been going on in DOC. Do you think it's worse now with Ward in office than it was before in the prior years, or not?
Oh, it's gotten worse under Mr. Ward. Now, we had issues prior to Mr. Ward, but Mr. Ward has been in power for the last 10 years, because he was the facility director. And then when he was the assistant commissioner, he was also in charge, because they put somebody in there that didn't know much about corrections. And so Mr. Ward was still in charge as the number 2 man, because he knew corrections, and the commissioner that they put in there had no law enforcement experience whatsoever. They're appointed by the governor, and usually it's their friend that they're putting in charge of a large, 50,000 inmates and 15,000 employees, and yet they don't know anything about corrections. And that's how they get appointed by the governor.
I'm laughing because it's a joke. Honestly, this is a joke because inmates' lives, right? And I don't always side with the inmates, right? But you're honestly over what you would call a hookup, right? You're putting these inmates' lives in danger. It's also affecting the loved ones. And again, I'm not saying no one committed a crime in there. I'm not saying we're not going there, That's not what I'm saying. We're targeting the fact that those inmates are in there and they're in harm's way. And what are we doing about it? I mean, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Those questions. Now I'm going to go on to question 3. Like with Wayne Garner.
Wayne Garner was too crazy. Wayne Gardner, he came in way too strong, way too strict. When he first came in, he took all of their exercising equipment. He took away all of their, they used to have bunks that were really thick, soft. He took them away. He wanted to make the inmates suffer. He says that they were being treated too kindly. And so he came in with this attitude that he wanted to clean up the prison system by taking the recreational equipment, by getting a goon squad and going from prison to prison, beating the inmates up, showing them that we're in charge. And what he created was a lot of hatred between the inmates and staff. And finally, it caught up with him where he was removed because the department received so many lawsuits because of his, he was too mean. And basically he came in there too gung-ho, so to speak.
So almost as if he had something personal with each and every individual.
Yeah, he just didn't understand the environment, and he thought he can go in there and just muscle his way through the, from prison to prison, locking the inmates up. Wow. I mean, the man was crazy.
Wow.
That's back in the 90s.
Yes. Yes. A lot of our viewers have had families and loved ones I've been in for a while. So I think they've seen all the steps along the way. And I think they're, and this is the thing that I want you guys to understand. With any of this stuff, like the comfortable, I think they call them pots, mats, whatever, that they had, okay, like they had weights. Once they take this stuff away, and I've learned this with my son who's disabled, right? Once they take these programs away, that's it. They're not coming back. They're just not going to bring them back. Mm-hmm. So you didn't do them right by doing that. Here goes another question. I heard you got 6 lifers out. What did you see in them to make you advocate on their behalf?
Well, the ones that I recommended, I knew them. They were either my orderly that worked up front with me, or I was heavily involved in the worship activities that were taking place at the prison. I go to church a lot, and I know that one of the rehabilitative tools that I used to use was worship services, religion, which works. And I gave all of the different religions their time. The Muslim, the Catholics, even the Wiccan.
That's awesome.
I didn't discriminate. So
right.
I had a chance to see them almost every day, interact with them. Oh, close the door. Close the door. Close the door. Sorry, my dogs are getting out of hand over here.
You're okay. You're okay.
But I got to see them every day. I seen how they were acting, how they were behaving, how they interacted with staff. I got to know their records. I looked at them really close, and so I felt good that they were not going to reoffend. Some of them, were in there for murder. Most of them were in there for murder, and I seen the change, and I seen how they conducted themselves. So I called the board. Now the board tells you every warden gets an opportunity to meet every single board member, and we get briefed as to what they look for when they make a recommendation for somebody to be released. They went over the guidelines as to what governs their decision making. So that, they explained all that to us. So they told us that if we have someone that we feel needs to be released, to make a phone call. So I had direct contact with board members, and I would call them and tell them, I need you to look at inmate John Smith. I think he's a good candidate to be released. This is how he's acted around me. This is what I know about him. I would go over their record, the things that they've accomplished while they were in prison, and so I had no problem with recommending them for release. And some of the inmates I knew from other prisons, so I knew them really well.
Okay, and Mr. Morales, I have to ask, because it's something that I asked yesterday, and I don't know if you answered because there's so many people like writing. I have a client right now I'm really advocating for because I just feel, first of all, he's done rehabilitation. He's got a job when he comes out, has family support. I'm not sure if you're aware, I'm also a church leader. My ministry is willing to back him up. As well, as an organization, we're willing to follow the case for 5 years to make sure that before we close the file successfully. He's done his entire case plan, has not had a DR, I believe, since
What was his charge?
So the initial charge while he went in there was an armed robbery. For that, we're working on that. He was sentenced a life sentence, right? Because he can get anywhere from, I believe, 12 to life, something like that, 10 to life. He got a life sentence for that. However, while he's in arraignment for that trial, or whatever, he gets stabbed in the back of his neck.
Right.
And
he takes a life.
A life sentence, but they're both together.
Right. But he took a life, right?
Yes.
Okay. The board tells you that in most cases, before they're going to release someone who has taken a life, they want them to do anywhere between 20 to 25 years, depending on the case. And that they will look at them, but they're going to set them off. They want them to do at least 20 or more years.
Because he's done 27.
Okay.
Our client has done 27. He just got set off for another 3 years.
Okay, and then no DR since then?
No DR since, I believe, 2019 last DR, my understanding.
Well, in order for that person to probably get a chance, the warden should call and give him a recommendation. Now, if the warden doesn't feel comfortable then there's something that we don't know about your client that he may not be telling us.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But typically, he's eligible to be paroled out after 20.
Okay.
But in this particular case, you got the armed robbery, and then you got the murder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that makes it hard too, because they see him as someone who's violent.
As a risk, yeah.
He's more of a risk.
Yeah. And so, and then so, but that's my question, right? Is he's got the support? We're willing to all vouch for him. The family's fully supporting him.
Right.
We have him a job pending. I mean, my organization has taken it upon themselves, something we do for every client anyway, right? But we went out of our way to say, look, we'll follow this client for 5 years. We're not going to close the file until it's successfully closed, meaning he's made it for at least 5 years, right? Because we don't want him going back in, especially with the way, they come out, they've been in there so long. We want to follow up. We want to make sure that, he's involved with community things. All of our clients, they're involved with community things. If we have something with the community, we want to get them involved as much as possible. So I'm just trying to understand what else can we do.
They probably want him to do 30. And then probably make him eligible then. That's what I'm thinking. Based upon the armed robbery, the murder, they probably want him to do 30.
Well, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Because we're like, we don't understand. There's full support. We don't get it.
Yep.
Not every inmate has that, but this one in particular, and that's why. Okay, so we have a question here from Laura, 2 questions, and I'm going to go ahead. After that, I'll go on to the next question I've asked. I have a question. I'm sorry, I have to put on my glasses. Soy media ciega. Un chin. So how long has the corruption been going on with DOC that you are aware of?
All right. What's specific about the corruption? Corruption is a very strong word. Now, there's corruption within the ranks. Those are your dirty staff that bring the stuff in, give it to the inmate. Then there's, corruption in terms of where some of the people in power use that power for gain. They take advantage of women. They promote you if you go to sleep with them. There's all kinds of corruption within the Department of Corrections, some more rampant than others. But to say that the leadership is corrupt, I don't think that that's the case. Now there are some of them who fall victim to harassing women, and they get caught cheating on their wives. They get caught, that type of corruption. But you don't really see the senior leadership conducting illegal activity. Now, there is favoritism where they promote, their friends, the people that they want, to promote. But in terms of, real corruption, it doesn't exist like the people might think. But favoritism, dirty staff, that exists. But now there is somewhere there are certain individuals who will treat inmates with no respect. They beat them up. They put the handcuffs on real tight. While they're in handcuffs, they keep hitting them. And so there are some levels of corruption that is different from one prison to another. Uh, meaning that you have certain members of the CERT team that don't know when to stop using force, and sometimes they get caught up when you're fighting an inmate and the inmate punches you in the face, knocks your teeth out. You you have a tendency to lose it, and so you want to beat the inmate up even after he's in handcuffs. You understand what I'm getting at?
Mhm.
So they use excessive force, but they lose their mind sometimes, and that's why we need the leaders who are there that once it gets out of hand to stop it. But there are some deputy wardens who will turn their cheek or turn and look away and allow it to happen. Um, I have seen that as well. I don't see it as much because they're going to be turned in, and we have the Office of Professional Standard that once they get wind, um, they come after you. And if you're going to use force, you better have two cameras. And if you don't have the camera, it's because you're doing something wrong. So, in those terms, there is some corrupt individuals that will use excessive force to try to get a point across to the inmate, which is wrong.
Question here. What did you do whenever you saw that?
I turned them in. If I seen that they were using excessive force, I would intervene immediately, and I would say, "You got a phone call? Hey, you need to walk away right now." And I have terminated quite a few people who have used excessive force, who have lied to me, or I've seen it on the camera. If I seen them beating an inmate up who was in handcuffs, I'm automatically going to send that to what we used to call internal affairs so that they can come in and look at it. And then if they see any violation of policy, um, any criminal act, they would take and arrest the officer. But I never condoned it. I've never, done it. But if I did, I'd turn their butt in.
Okay, so it's kind of gonna, your reply is gonna kind of lead to my next question. Were you ever involved in any illegal acts during your years as a correctional officer, or asked to participate or assist in any cover-up or brutality against any inmates during those years?
Yes. In my early career, um, there were some sergeants who wanted me to fake um, documents to he would say, I want you to put this in your statement, and I would tell them, hey Sarge, I'm not about to do that because you want me to lie on paper, and then once I put it on paper, then it's on me. But
Absolutely.
there are some who want to cover it up, and they'll tell you what to say in the statement because they've done it so long and they know how to write it in the report. So yes, early in my career, um, there was some situations that may have gotten out of hand, and in order to cover it up, they would coerce you into writing certain things or leaving certain things out of your report. But I was one of those guys. I didn't play that. Um, you know, I had integrity, and I wasn't about to do that. And if I'd have done it, I wouldn't have made it 22 years.
And
But I've
I
seen it.
want to I want to add, me being Boricua as well, I think in our culture overall, integrity is the key thing. Not to say that it doesn't happen. There's the bad and the good, always. But overall, we as people, Boricuas, Puerto Ricans, we are very big on integrity and doing the right thing.
and work
Um,
ethic.
yes, yes, absolutely. That is me. You actually, I think you got out of the army or into the army when I was doing this in
Yeah.
1976. So that tells me how much you know, right? Your
Yeah.
wisdom, because you've been
But it
around.
does happen. There's a lot of occasions where a lot of officers, cert members, sergeants, lieutenants, deputy wardens, where they were caught up in um, in doing things that they were not supposed to, beating the inmates up, trying to cover up certain things. Um, so it does exist, and um, you know a lot of people don't put up with it, but does it exist? Yes, it does.
Wow. Um, so I'm going to answer the next question, or ask you the next question. I get a lot of complaints and cases from inmates who say that oftentimes it's the warden who gives the command for the inmates to be beaten. Sometimes these beatings lead to severe damages and even death. Have you, during your time as a warden, ever been given any of these commands or ever intervened on behalf of an inmate who you saw in such a predicament? So the question goes both ways.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Can you hear? Yeah, it's hard to
okay,
hear you.
okay. So I'll read it again. Let me get close to the mic.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, there you go.
okay. So the question is, I get a lot of complaints cases from inmates who say that oftentimes it's the warden who gives the command for inmates to be beaten, and sometimes these beatings lead to severe damage and even death. Have you, during your time as a warden, ever given any of these commands or ever intervened on behalf of an inmate who you saw in such a predicament?
Yes. Um, I have never ordered any of my cert members or sergeant or anyone to hurt an inmate on my behalf. I've had inmates throw feces right in my mouth, um, and the very next day they cut themselves, and I personally carried him full of blood and took him to medical. Um, I've had inmates who have slapped me in the face, and the next day, I'm talking to him like nothing ever happened. I expect that to happen in the prison environment. Um, but I do know of wardens who have gotten in trouble for doing that, and so I do know that not every warden is an angel, um, but I don't think it's as corrupt as a lot of people think. There might be one, maybe two, um, who may have done that, but from the wardens that I knew, they were all pretty much stand up people. You had your few rotten apples, but um, I've never seen at the warden level where they sanctioned beatings, but I'm sure it does exist. Um, but I'd never done it, um, and it happens on rare occasions. Now I've seen it more with the lower ranks, captain and lieutenants, but not at the level where a warden or a regional director. I've never seen it or heard of it.
So they have more to lose, is what you're saying.
They have more to lose, but to say that it never happens, it may have happened at one time or another.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it,
Absolutely.
it may have happened, but
Comes with the
um,
territory.
I know most of the wardens, and a lot of them are stand up, people. A lot of wardens are hated because of their position, um, but a lot of them are stand up guys. Some of them might be lazy, um, but for the most part, they're pretty stand up.
Okay. And I wanted to add, you guys, I'm sorry, I had a situation with the stalker. As you guys know, we did a public service announcement. So my business line for Lunchtime with Anna was on Do Not Disturb. I just realized it's been off. So if you try to call, please try again. I apologize for that. I completely forgot. I've been traveling and stuff. So the number is 321-252-8084, and feel free to call. We're going to go on, and I appreciate your transparency. I'm going to go ahead and ask these questions. Hi, Tawanda. A question from Tawanda. A write-up. Then what happens for the abuse of power? So I can imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I hear inmates say this all the time, CO gets pissed off for whatever reason or upset for whatever reason, and they just give write-ups to everybody who was there. Now that's in your record for DR. Isn't that abuse of power? They don't ever get reprimanded for that.
There are, for example, women have been known that when they don't like an inmate, they know that a charge to get them on is a B11, which is the masturbation, which is a serious charge. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm a female and I don't like you, and we get into it, I'm going to write you up and I'm going to give you a B11. I've seen that happen. That's an abuse of power. If there is an incident involving more than one person, usually everyone involved is going to get a disciplinary report. But today, there's cameras in just about every open area. But back in the day, we didn't have no cameras. And so if we arrive on the scene, everybody on the scene typically is suspected of being involved. So when you arrive on a scene, you don't know who's guilty of what. You don't know who's involved in what. So everybody involved, everybody that's there is going to get a DR. And then hopefully, somebody's going to tell us what happened. And then once we sort everything out, hopefully the ones not involved don't get the DR, and then the ones who are involved get the DR. But the inmates have a code that they don't snitch, and so it's hard to really say who was and was not involved. So in most cases, everybody at the scene gets a DR, unless you get the snitch who tells you what happened, which a lot of times, snitches do exist, and they're going to tell.
Now let me ask you a question. I actually have two questions, and then we'll go on to the next question. I have two questions for you. You being from Harlem, right? I'm just saying, because my dad was raised in Harlem as well. I think you guys did also have a code. Is that correct?
Say it again.
Is that fair to say that also you being from Harlem, you guys also had a code of no snitching?
Oh yeah,
growing up.
I understood the prison life. I really did.
Yeah. But
I knew how to work around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just say that because it's just when you're raised in a certain atmosphere, right? So that's just the code. That's just the code. And that was my dad. He was raised in Harlem. In the project.
Same way in the Army. What happens in the field stays in the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it.
He was real big at letting us know that, man, no snitching. Like, I don't want to hear it. Don't complain on each other, that kind of thing. So,
yeah.
And I thank him for that, because I've learned to just kind of stay out of things, stay neutral.
You mind your own business, yeah.
There you go. And I think that's our culture too. So that's our culture. I have another question for you. The camera footage now on what you just said, it's only used to substantiate an officer's claim, not always an inmate. What is your, because I've heard of so many inmates saying, even if the footage is showing, or they're saying that it's this, the footage is showing this. But again, it goes back to what you said, a report that omits some of the stuff. So what can we do then? So what then? You
Uh,
know, because
they're never going to show the family members the footage. So it depends on the integrity of the senior person who views the tape, and they can see who's involved, they can see what happened, and then based upon what they view, they do the right thing. um so it relies on the integrity of the person. Now,
of the
I
person.
viewed all of the uses of force, and if I seen anything that was done inappropriately, um I'm gonna do the right thing. I have exonerated inmates that, um after I viewed the report and it didn't correspond with what I seen, then I would say, um, uh, let Smith go, let Harry go. They had nothing to do with it. Based upon what I viewed on the tape, they had nothing to do with it. So why are they in the hole? Well, I just thought that they were involved, and so um, the tape can hurt people or it can save people. So it depends on who's viewing it and their integrity.
And that, I guess that makes sense looking at it from that point of view. We have a question here from Chris Wright, and then I'm going to go on to to ask the next question. And guys, you guys can keep writing them. I will go back and forth on them. This way, I'm letting everybody interact. Why is it that the staff, like wardens or counselors, do nothing to help rehabilitate and help do what is needed to get these guys back out of the system is what I'm thinking.
Okay. A lot of people have that perception that the counselors don't do nothing, the warden doesn't do nothing, but um, each individual um, has a case plan that has been tailored to each individual. It tells them what classes they have to attend, and it's room, as the room is available, that's when they put in people into the classes. But the counselors can only do but so much. Inmates, they need, but you have one counselor to every 200, 300 inmates. So the inmates feel like they're not getting much from the counselor because the counselor has 300 other inmates. The warden has 2,000 inmates. So there's no way that he can give each inmate, attention as they would hope for. So they draw a perception that the warden doesn't care. But, um, programs are delivered Monday through Friday. The individuals that are assigned there, if you're getting out sooner, then you're going to get priority to go to that class. So, counselor can only do so much. Um, the counselor can help you make an emergency phone call when there's a death in the family or somebody severely ill, but that's all. They can't sit down and bullshit with you, for hours when they've got 300 other inmates. So, inmates will have a tendency to feel like the counselor is not doing nothing for them, but it's just limited to what they can do.
And I understand that, but I've also called, like for clients, like I'm gonna give you an example. There's one that works in the medical department, right?
The
This
medical is not
person,
going to get, they're not going to want to talk because of the HIPAA law. So if you call
Yeah. Well,
medical,
yeah.
you're not going
You
to
have to
get,
have. Yeah.
you're probably not going to get anywhere because those nurses don't want to talk to family members.
Yeah. Unless you have, of course, a
A
POA.
release, yeah,
Yes.
a
And
medical
I tell
release.
yes, I tell everybody, go ahead and have somebody out on the street. Look, for loved ones that are watching, make sure that your loved one in prison has a medical release out to you or to somebody they trust, so
Yeah.
that you're able to have access to all of this, because you do not know this unless you actually have dealt with clients in the past.
And
But
nurses don't want to talk to family members. You know what I mean?
mhm, mhm. Well, because and I could imagine there's just so much with it. My background is actually medical, so I
Hmm.
do understand, especially with HIPAA. I do
Yeah.
understand that, and this is for loved ones. You guys have to understand from that nurse's point of view. She's also given an oath that she will not violate any of that patient privacy, so forth, so on. She can lose her job. Not only that,
Yeah.
she can lose her license. It's just a whole array, a lawsuit, all kinds of stuff if she gives information she's not supposed to give. Not that they don't want to. So just make sure to make it easier for you, right? That your loved one has a medical release, power of attorney signed to you or to whoever they trust, wife, spouse, whatever, parent, sister, whatever, friend. Make sure that you have that, and that if anything is ever needed, they're able to access that. Um, Another question they have here, I'm going to read all these down, and then I'm going to go on to the next question. Next question is, so is it access to jail footage, or is it deleted every month and re-recorded over? So in other words, how
Well,
long
that's
is the video footage kept?
a security question, but um, most of them are recorded for up to anywhere between 14 to 30 days after the incident. So they have enough on the hard drive to um, to hold it anywhere between depending on the the video uh, that they have at that prison. Um, the longest that you can hold it is up to 30 days, and the shortest is anywhere between 7 to 14 days. So anything over that, it has already been re-recorded.
Hmm.
But if it's a major incident, they're gonna record it as it happened.
He said, like what he said, however, a court order to get that footage, however, in most cases, footage is deleted in many jails. So I
Yeah,
guess
if it's over a
that,
certain amount of time, um, but there's always a recording if a major incident happened. They're gonna record that segment. So excuse me. So if something happened, it's gonna be documented. But if they're looking for footage that has that nobody's aware that something happened, they may not be able to get that footage. If it's over 7 days or 14 days or 30 with the more newer, more modern machines.
so may I ask if you're willing to help, because these are activists also asking these questions, right? How, if there is an incident, can activist or loved one make sure that we do get our hands on the footage to
Um,
defend or to
the
help our
only way they're
client?
going to release that footage is if the commissioner authorizes it based upon legal advice that he gets from our attorneys. Some of that footage can be damaging to the department, and they can be held liable to lawsuits. So, depending on what's on the footage, they're going to have to get a court order to get that footage. They're just not going to give it to you because you asked for it. So, if you know of a particular incident and we know that there's footage, you're going to have to get an attorney to issue a subpoena, get a court order to get that footage. They're just not going to give it to you. It's too much liability on their behalf.
Okay.
So their policy is they're not going to give anything out unless they have a court order making them give it to you or to the attorney.
Okay, so Tawanda, I hope that helped answer your question. She was also a fellow activist. So I'm going to read these questions. Right under Chris Wright's question was Jamil. So what made you disregard the code when you entered the Department of Corrections? I'm not sure.
Oh, say it in the mic again.
So the question is, so what made you disregard the code when you entered the Department of Corrections?
What made me disregard the code?
Yes. I think that was from something you answered earlier.
What code is he talking about?
Jamil, if you're still online, if you could please say what code you're referring to, and I'll go on to the next question. Then
is he accusing me of something?
I don't think that was it. I think it was something on the conversation. Jamil, if you're there, if you could, we'll wait for him to answer and we'll ask that again, Mr. Morales. Ask him, why don't staff members like counselors do nothing to, okay, no, we already answered that one. Chris Wright, was there a counselor that told you, okay, we're getting, oh, okay, I see. The code of silence in Harlem. It was when we were talking about Harlem.
Well, I said that I understand that code, where, what happens on the street stays on the street. But in my position, if I seen something that was inappropriate, unprofessional, I took action. I didn't hold to a silent code. I'm going to do the right thing.
Okay, that makes sense. I've just read this. Chris Wright says that he had a counselor that once told him he would lose his job if he helped try to get him home. Are you familiar with those situations going on?
Okay. It's not a counselor's responsibility to help an inmate get out of jail or prison, rather. That's not what they're there for. They're there to provide programming. They're there to go over the case plan with you. They're there to be a liaison between you and the family member during emergencies. But it's not the counselor's responsibility to help inmates get out of prison. They're there to help in the process of you getting out, but they're not responsible to do legwork to get inmates out, outside of delivering the programming, going over the case plan with them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't understand his question.
No. He can probably go into detail. He also states here, this is Chris Wright, they keep incidents hidden from family members until the footage is released, like stabbings and beatings of the inmates by staff. They hide the inmates on lockdown units with no phone calls to inform their family members. Now, I will say this, Mr. Morales, as a human rights activist, it has happened to where family has power of attorney. They're calling like crazy to the medical department. They're calling up front. They're calling everywhere, trying to get a well check on their family member. And the phones actually get disconnected. And I know this as an activist because I've tried to call to help certain families reach out.
They're not going to give any details as to what happened because of liability issues between family members and the department. Now, It's also the warden's job to protect the the brand, so to speak, not to hide anything, not to cover up anything, but to be careful as to what information that they give the 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 family. So they're not going to give you every little detail. They're going to give you basic information. There was an incident. Your son was injured. They're not going to give you names of the individuals involved. They're not going to give you names of the officers involved. They're going to protect all that because um, you know, everything is subject to a lawsuit. And when the department loses a lawsuit, we're talking millions of dollars. So wardens are instructed to only provide information that is absolutely necessary without giving any specific details as to the nature of the incident. So that's
Okay.
why it appears that they're secretive, that they're withholding information, but they're doing that because that's how they're instructed to do, not to provide any details as to what happened, but to simply say your son was involved in an incident. These are his injuries. This is what we're doing for him, and boom, they leave it at that.
And
Um,
see,
Now, sometimes in certain cases, it doesn't happen rampant. They a lot of people think that there's so much corruption that it's rampant. In rare cases, yes, some people do falsify documents. Some people do make false statements. Some people do try to cover up. But that is not an everyday, every incident situation. Um, and to say that it happens on each and every incident is simply not true. But does it happen on occasion? Yes.
next question. Um, for the record, why are you no longer working in the Department of Corrections and Jail?
I got old and I got a lot of feces thrown at me. And I
That's
reached
horrible. That's disgusting.
I reached the age of retirement.
Okay, so you've retired at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the feces part. I don't know. I didn't even like changing my children's diapers, just for the record. So
Yeah,
I don't think I could deal
I
with
got to
that.
my point
That would
where
be it.
enough was enough. I literally had to fight inmates every day to feed them. Um, at the high max, I had the worst of the worst, Georgia's most dangerous inmates, and so most of them had murdered more than one person. Some of them had 3 and 4 bodies underneath them. Some of them were serial killers. So the minute you open their flap, they squeeze shit in your face, in your mouth, in your eyes. Um,
I
and all you're
can't.
trying to do is give them their food. Then
I
when you give
can't.
them the food, they throw the carrots in your face, and then they stick their arm out, and you got to fight them. You got to tase them. It became too rough for me.
Yeah,
It was
too
an
much, huh?
everyday thing. It happened every time we had to feed them. Not all of them, but a good majority of them just every day fought. And
I
we were
can
short
imagine.
staffed, so I had to work like a CO, even though I was a warden. I
I can
fed them. I
imagine.
took them to the shower. I took them to rec. I took them to medical, dental. As a warden, I put fires out. I carry inmates to get them the medical.
True.
Yep. So I just got old. Soy viejo.
So let me ask you a question. I would like you're married, is that correct?
Yes.
Was that tough on your wife?
Yeah. You want to hear from her? Here, you tell them how it was.
No, she doesn't want to. It's okay.
It's okay. No, it was very stressful. Very my anxiety levels went up, especially when we were over at the SMU, the high max. It was just constant drama every day with the inmates over there, and then the staff not wanting to work and come up there and do their job, and it put a lot more on Jose, you know. And when he comes home for lunch or whatever, it was like, he couldn't rest or anything because he was constantly having to answer a question, answer the phone, uh, text messages, emails, whatever it was. And so I was there, and sometimes I felt like I was actually working up there with him at the prison. And it was it was very overwhelming, and especially the last year that we were there. And so I was worried about his health and his mindset and things like that. But yeah, it was pretty stressful. And but I was there for him. Tried to help him as much as I could, and giving him advice as well. So.
And that's I just want you to know, as a woman, right? I commend you because the role that we play a lot of times is not seen. So congratulations on backing up your husband,
Thank you.
right, and supporting him and being able to overcome that as a wife, as his spouse, so forth, so on. And I mean, I'm sure you heard a lot of the stories we're not even. So I commend you and thank you for sharing, because I
No
think people
problem.
also
Thank
need to
you.
see that perspective, that there is a wife at home, there is a family, they are also human, just like the inmate is also human,
Exactly.
So, well, we have a caller here.
All right.
Lunchtime with Anna. Go ahead with your question or your comment. And how are you this evening?
Good evening. I have a question. How did you make it 22 years in the Department of Corrections, all the way up to a position of warden, and you never participated in any type of corruption or cover up at all?
It's called integrity, my man.
Nothing.
There are people who have
What made
integrity.
them trust you to be in a position of warden after you constantly reported, according to your statements that you made, that you constantly reported if you saw something happen, you wouldn't participate in any cover-up and reported people? What made them trust you with the position of warden?
If you could answer that.
Okay.
And thank you for your
seems to
question.
think that there's no people that can do their jobs with integrity. I served in the United States Army for 23 years, so I know what integrity and honor is all about. My brother spent 30 years in prison, and I would have hated anyone who had treated him with less than dignity and respect. Now, I'm not the type of guy that's going to take advantage of my position and whoop an inmate's ass and try to cover it up. That's just not me. I went 22 years with integrity, with honor. I didn't like to see any inmate mistreated under my watch. I was a pastor for 3 years in a church. So I had sympathy for the inmates. I wouldn't let nobody mistreat them. I never mistreated them. When they came to me with a medical problem, the food wasn't no good, they didn't have any uniforms, I went out of my way to make sure that they got what they needed. Now, there were some who would try to take advantage, some who would try to manipulate the system, and those type of inmates, I would deal with them. But for the most part,
Warden.
when they asked me for things, I was one that looked out for the health and welfare of the inmates. And if you know of any inmate that was under me, you could ask them, and they will tell you how I was. Now, there were some that hated my guts because I was strict, but for that average inmate, they'll tell you that Mr. Morales took care of them and that I was fair.
Um, Mr. Morales,
Yeah.
Tawanda here wrote, and she wrote, I think what he's trying to say, was it not any consequences for you reporting your staff?
Yeah, they were
Is what
fired.
he's
Some
meaning
of
to
them were
ask.
arrested. In fact, when I was at the SMU and I saw an inmate that was beat up, I went to medical and I saw his face was all bloody. I went and I called the internal affairs immediately and reported it. There was 7 staff members involved, and all 7 of them were arrested and put in jail. And the ones that didn't go to jail, they were terminated. Oh yeah, they knew that Morales didn't play that, and some of them hated me because I wouldn't cover them up. In other words, they were calling me inmate lover because I turned them in over an inmate.
Wow.
And this was at the high max. 7 from a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and the rest of them were COs, all terminated. And some of them, they went to jail. They went to prison.
Okay.
And I did that on more than one occasion.
Okay. Go ahead with your question or your comment. And then I'm going to go
Well,
on to the next question.
You know, you're saying what you have done to help the inmates, but I'm trying to figure out what made the Georgia Department of Corrections trust you after all this reporting that you've done and exposing of their corruption. What made them trust you to be over one of their plantations?
Because Jamal, not everybody in GDC is corrupt. There are some at the top that have integrity. There are some that they want you to tell them when there's something wrong. That's why they put a warden there. They want to be able to trust that warden to do the right thing. Now, you may have a bad perception about GDC to the point where you think that they're trying to cover up everything, but that's simply not the case. Do they cover up something? Yes, but there are people up there that do the right thing. There's other people watching us. Even though I'm a warden, there are people that watch everything I do, and they'll even tell on warden. So not everything in corrections is corrupt. It's a hard job, and they trusted me because they knew I was going to do the right thing.
I'm going to go on to the next question. And I also have questions that are being typed to me personally. Very, very few. Same as the military because I served and they take care of And that is true. The military does. Hang on. I got one more question, and then we're going to go on to the next question. Go ahead with your question or your comment.
I know, but I hear what you're saying. But you're talking about the Georgia Department of this. My uncle has been in prison for 46 years. So I've been hearing about the Georgia Department of Corrections since my whole life growing up. And you tell me what these folks do and don't do. Okay, well, why is it then if they're really trying to uncover corruption and things in the Georgia Department of Corrections, why don't the people just come through for a regional direction? Why did they put the prison on point 2-3 weeks in advance that they're going to come inspect their prison? If they're really trying to uncover the corruption, why don't they just pop up? Why did the Department of Justice call 2 weeks in advance and let the prisons know, or we're coming to inspect, so they can prepare themselves to be ready for the inspection? If they're really trying to uncover corruption and see what's going on in the prisons, why don't they just show up out of the blue?
You're going to have to ask the DOJ.
Making avenues for the people in the prison to get themselves together before they come through, if they're really trying to uncover the corruption.
I do agree with that now, Mr. Morales, because I have another call coming in. I'm going to take one more question, and then I got to go on to the next one. So each limited on his time too, guys. Go ahead with your question or your comment.
Yes, I am calling in to speak to ex-Warden Morales.
Yes.
The question I have for him is, in 2015, all the way to 2016, there were inmates, including myself, was inside of that prison with asbestos.
Yes.
On your watch.
Yes.
Now,
that is true.
I've been listening to the conversations about correcting.
Are you referring to? You're referring
but there are
to
other inmates that was in that prison under his watch.
Okay, hang on. Which prison are you referring to?
Coastal State Prison.
Coastal State Prison.
All right, perfect. All right, now, the way that asbestos is removed, it is done in a very particular manner. Now, first of all, I was not responsible that when they built that building in 1970s that they used asbestos. That's not my fault. So, asbestos is in about 80% of our prisons. As long as the asbestos is not messed with, it has no health hazard. So before we removed any asbestos, we removed every single inmate out of the building, and then we went in, covered the whole thing, and a professional asbestos remover removed all of the asbestos. So, he can't put that on me. That asbestos was there, built even before I became warden. So, when we remodeled, we took every precaution, and we did it according to the law, and it was removed by a licensed professional asbestos removing company.
So let me ask you a question. Were the inmates moved for their safety? Because we all know that asbestos can cause all kinds of problems from mental to health in other ways. Were they removed, or what did you do while they were under your watch as you being the warden of the prison?
Is he talking?
Yes. Did you hear me? Okay, what I was asking was when this happened that you said, you guys took care and fixed the problem, right? What did you do as a warden? Did you remove these inmates out of there for safety? Because we all know asbestos can cause
Yeah.
any
You
type of,
talking to me?
from lead, yes, from
Yeah,
lead poisoning,
yeah.
so forth, so on.
Yeah, we removed all the inmates out of the building, and the building was covered with plastic. They had machines and fans to keep the asbestos contained, and then they had filters to remove it. The asbestos was in the tiles and in the caulking around the windows, so it was not in a powder form, so it couldn't hurt anyone breathing it, because it was the powder was kept to a minimum. The only place they had the asbestos was in the tile and in the caulking around the windows. That's the only place. Everything else was made out of cinder block.
Okay.
So yeah, they took the necessary precautions. And I explained that to each of the inmates that were there.
So Jamil is asking, so if you weren't getting your mouth filled up with fecal matter on a regular basis, would you still be working G Department of Corrections?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
If you weren't going through the trauma of having the fecal matter thrown at you constantly on a regular basis, would you still be working GDOC?
Probably so.
Okay. And I can see, right, why that would traumatize anybody. I like I said, I didn't even like changing my kids' diapers, but I had to because I birthed them. So I don't think anybody likes that. I'm just saying. My next question to you, and this is something coming up with this rally that we have coming up on September 7th, which we see you will be a part of. What are your thoughts on the parole board in the state of Georgia?
I could tell you that they have a hard job. It's not an easy thing to have to be to sign a document that releases an individual who has murdered someone, and then when they get released within 30 days, they're back in prison because they reoffended. And so, the risk that they take is extraordinary. A lot of people think that they can, if they do their 20 years, boom, they get out. But they have to consider what the inmate did. They have to consider the impact that it had on the family members of the victims, and whether or not they pay their debt to society. I think that they should, they should have some guideline that they need to go by. And if a person does everything that is expected of them and they've done their time, I feel that that individual should be given the opportunity to be released.
And I'm going to give you some examples that I do know for a fact. When we've had inmates ask either the wardens in their prison, so forth, so on. Maybe they saved a life, and the warden has said, "I'm not writing anything for you or anybody else." You have
most
others
wardens
that
are not going to do it.
Okay.
They don't want their name on the release in the event that he reoffend. Very few wardens take that risk.
Got you. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I have someone else calling here. Go ahead with your question or your comment, and I'm going to go on to the next question after this. Is anybody there?
Oh, yes. How you doing?
Hi, go ahead with your question or your comment. And we'll go ahead, and then after that, we're going to go to the next question.
Okay. I've been on the phone call listening to the interview, and I was listening to Mr. Morales speak on a lot of positive things that he got did as a warden. And my concern is this. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Right here. You go. Okay, I didn't know if you heard me or not, but what I was speaking on it was Mr. Morales, by you being a warden, I heard the things that spoke on about what you had did with a couple guys that like as speaking as the things that they by you not being a warden no more, you being retired. Like, what are some of the things that we could possibly take or get our family members try to take to like to go talk to the commissioners and anything that was I heard you speak on as you had called the parole board yourself and you had gave them a good resume and it was an inmate that you had helped get out before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just concerned about like what do we do or what kind of program or what kind of things that we could talk to or get our family members or other family members to talk to guys been doing 25 years and they done completed all their program.
Oh, I see what your question is. Okay. Okay, give me 1 second. Mr. Morales, were you able to hear that? Because I know that the signal's
Yeah,
coming and
I
going
think
on
I
that
got
call.
the gist of the question. He wants to know what his family members can do to help their family members get out. What they can tell the parole board to help them get out.
As well as, from what I understood from the question, as well as what can the inmate do from in the prison to help them get out as well. So how can it be done both ways is my understanding from the question.
They have to finish their case plan.
Okay.
2, they've got to be patient. They've got to understand that the parole board is going to make them do at least 20 years if they have a murder charge. They're not going to let them out unless they've done their time. Don't get any DRs. Don't get involved in any gang activity. Treat staff with dignity and respect. Mind your business. Keep your nose clean. If there's a lifer program, ask to join the lifers program. If there's a faith-based program there, have them do go into the faith-based. Have them start a portfolio with all of their certificates. If they don't have a GED, go to school, get your GED. If they have a college program, go to college. The board sees that you're doing and making every effort to rehabilitate yourself, the more chances you are for them to release you.
Okay.
Show remorse.
Yes.
Show remorse.
I tell all my clients, not fake remorse, but show real remorse from the bottom. I mean, from your heart. I really am sorry. This is not going to happen again. I tell all my clients to do this. I think that's really big, Mr. Morales. Go ahead, Mr. Morales.
They have to show the board that they are working on themselves. And they have to understand that the board has a big responsibility. They just can't let everybody out. You can't let a Jeffrey Dahmer out. And in some cases, they will never get out. They will die in prison. And I know a lot of family members don't want to hear that, but depending on the crime, there are some individuals that will never get out of prison. They will die in prison.
Wow. And that's fair.
That's the reality.
To say, yeah. Yeah, and that's the reality of life, you know? Um, okay, I know white inmates out here on the street right now who paroled out on on murder charges and only served 18 years. Why is it not like this for other races? In other
It,
words,
it
what
may
he's
have been
asking,
a manslaughter, or it may have been a lesser murder charge. If it's
understood.
capital murder, murder in the first degree, that's different from second degree murder or manslaughter, or something like that.
Okay, so Mr. Wright, his question is, once the case plan is complete and you've taken all your courses / programs and classes and you've done everything you can do, 29 years, you're up for parole and they still set you off for saying you haven't done enough time served on that charge, which is going to go on to my next question. If you could please answer that.
Then continue to do good until the next time they hear you. There's a reason why they set you off. And they'll never tell you that reason. But if they set you off, there's something in your record that warrant for them to set you off. And you may not agree with it, you may not understand it, but it is the way that it is. And every case is different. Every individual is different. And you don't know what the board members are thinking.
Now I'm going to ask the next question. So recently, as I had previously discussed with you, Mr. Morales, and I mentioned this earlier, hang on. Okay, recently, and as I have previously discussed with you, Mr. Morales, one of our clients from WCU was just set off by the parole board for 3 years after serving 27 years. And he was told, we don't feel you have served enough time given the nature of your crime. And as of today, I've learned that 3 more of our clients were just set off last week with the same exact reason. What are your thoughts on this excuse by the parole board to psychologically and spiritually destroy these men, their families, and as well as their families? Because basically what they're doing is dangling a carrot before these men are playing a dangerous and cruel psychological game with these men's lives and their family as well. What is your take on it? Are you there, Mr. Morales? Did I lose him? Oh, I think I lost him. Come back on, Mr. Morales. Just click on the same link. I thought you were there. I just I just read a whole long question to you. If you could please come back on, Mr. Morales. I promise you we're almost done. I got like 3 more questions after this, 3 or 4. While he's doing that, if you guys have any more questions or comments, please feel free to ask them, because he's willing to give you guys this transparency as much as possible. And I want you guys to come with these hard questions that maybe you will not get answered anywhere else, because he's willing to do it, to answer the question. Okay, I'm going to send you the link right now. And I appreciate you guys asking these questions, because sometimes we do need someone to be able to answer these hard questions. And I appreciate Mr. Morales for taking the time to answer these. I hear his wife in the background, and being able to take the time, right, to give us a better understanding where we as either as loved ones or as human justice activists fighting for the people. Because not only do I fight for these inmates, I also fight for the disabled, which is a whole different fight. So it's just my love for people, you know. So I've resent you the link again. If you want to go back on, Mr. Morales. And I do agree that it was very rare on how we did it, because I hear so many other stories. Now, let's see if you can get on. It's, again, the same way that you did get on earlier, if you're able to. While he's doing that, again, if you guys have any more questions, comments, because I want to go ahead and get to these last 4 questions if we could before the interview is over. At all possible. Absolutely, I agree with you, Mr. Williams. Remember that the parole board used to have as one of its duties the following the release all persons that are commensurate with their offense. Emphasis added. That means an exact measure being forgotten. I do agree with that. And to me, I care about each individual so much, right? That go ahead and try again, Mr. Morales. I'm going to send you another invite. Make sure. Hey, mommy, how you doing? I didn't know that was you. um, I think I just heard you. Okay, Mr. Morales.
All right.
I think that we got 2 other people, and you know, I'll get to them as soon as we're able to, as soon as I get a chance to finish these questions. Okay, so I'm going to read to you again the last question that I read. Recently, as I have previously discussed with you, one of our clients at We See You was just set off by the parole board for 3 more years after serving 27 years, as you know, as I told you. And what he was told was, we don't feel you've done enough, you've served enough time, given the nature of your crime. And as of today, I've learned that 3 more of our clients were just set off last week with the same exact reason. What are your thoughts on this excuse by the parole board to psychologically and spiritually destroy these men and their families? Because basically what they're doing is a dangling of a carrot before these men and playing a dangerous and cruel psychological game with these men's lives and their loved ones' lives as well. What is your take on that?
Although I sympathize with the family, but the parole board sees and reads everything that the inmate did. They have the transcripts. They have the pictures of the murder scene. They have everything that family members don't see, and maybe the inmate had forgotten. And again, they are the ones that has to put their name on that parole. So they want to make sure that every dot or every I is dotted, every T is crossed. And although I know it takes the hope away from the inmate, once the parole board makes their decision, um, they have to accept it, keep their hopes high, and do what the parole board said. If they're not going to accept it, they're going to become bitter. They're going to be more susceptible to be suicidal. They're going to lose hope. The best thing to do is remain positive and keep doing the right thing. Eventually, the board will release them. But if they tell you they feel you haven't done enough time, it's because the nature of the crime.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the main 3 things that first need to be done to begin reforming this system? And what part are you willing to play in to make sure that it's reformed?
I'll ask you one more time. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the main 3 hang on one second. I have somebody calling in, but I want to ask you this question. In your opinion, what are the 3 main things that first need to be done to begin reforming the system, and what part are you willing to play in its reformation?
All right. Number 1 is you have to hold staff accountable when they treat inmates inappropriately. The number 1 thing is to treat inmates with dignity and respect. Number 2 is you have to have enough staff. So you got to recruit. You got to pay them what they're worth. Otherwise, you're going to get unprofessional people who are just going to take the job for whatever benefits. Pay them what they're supposed to be paid. And 3 is you have to have, you got to keep the inmates busy. You have to give them a trade. If you don't give an inmate something that he can do when he gets out, some kind of a trade, mechanic, small engine repair, something, a skill, so that when they do get out, they're able to perform that skill that they've learned, whether it's barbershop, landscaping, and if they're already educated, then you don't have to worry about it. But for those who don't have a skill or a trade or education, provide them that education so that they can be productive citizens.
And the
pay
second
them
part
for their wages. If we're going to make them work, they need to get paid for it so that they're not a burden on their family.
Absolutely. And Laura, you are right on that. Not all prisons do provide these programs for them because I hear clients tell me, well, I can't get that because they don't have it here. Because I'll tell them, get a trade, go to college, show them that you're ready. One of the things that my organization does, we're connected with construction. So we make sure that they get a job doing construction instead of making $10 an hour. Maybe you're making $20, $30, $40 an hour, where survival is a little bit better and chances of you going back in there are a lot less, in our opinion. And from what we've seen our track record be with our clients that have been home, we don't have those problems or those issues. I got somebody calling in. Go ahead with your question or your comment.
Yes, ma'am. I heard Mr. Morales saying when you asked him in regards to the nature
the crime?
Say, you're not serving enough time.
Yeah.
With the reason why your client was denied parole, and his response was that if this is being said, it's due to the nature of their crime.
That's what he responded. Yes.
The nature of a person's crime is never going to change. If he committed a murder back in 1976, in 2022, the nature of their crime is not going to change. In 2052, the nature of the crime is not going to change. So,
but it's the type of crime.
The person can change, though.
What he's saying is, what he's responding to you is the type of crime that they committed. I don't know if you could hear that, because I'm hearing it through my head.
I know it's hard for him to accept that.
It's never going to change. Whatever a person did to come to prison, it's not going to change. But the people do. This is the purpose. The man, I'm listening to him. He said they give you a case plan. He said this is what the purpose of diagnostic is. They assess what you're locked up for. They take you through this diagnostic process, and they give you a case plan. So if a person completes this case plan and does all these things that the parole board mandates and that the case plan regulates, then you turn around when they do it and then say, well, due to the nature of your crime, you haven't served enough time. This is no longer about rehabilitation. Because everything that was
they're in prison for
everything that was
punishment as
required
well.
of them for rehabilitation has been done. Now this is being strictly punitive. So is the Department of Corrections about rehabilitation, or is it about punishing the person for over and 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 over again?
So he's saying that it's both. I'm not sure if you can hear him.
And he's got to accept the fact that some people will never get out. There's some people that is just not going to get out.
So is it fair to say, Mr. Morales, that why wouldn't they just tell him you're never going to get out? I mean, I think that's wasting their time, the family time, everybody's time. Just, because I understand life without the possibility of parole, so you don't have to worry because you're never going to be paroled anyway. But if you're giving the false pretense of you're going to be paroled or you may be paroled, right? Maybe because it's their choice. May be paroled. Why keep giving them that false pretense if they know in their heart already that they're going to deny it?
I understand his frustration, but it's up to the parole board, and it's a difficult situation. You cannot think about what they're thinking, but there's a reason why they set them off. There's always a reason. And it might be that there's a family member who is telling the parole board, don't let him out, or some other political situation. And it's hard to accept, but it is what it is. I mean, that's something that that hopefully we can change. But for right now, once the parole board makes a decision, you got to go by it. Okay. Unfortunately.
I have one more caller here. Caller, go ahead with your question or your comment, and please mute your line because I can hear background noise, and they're not going to be able to hear you. One more caller here.
Okay, hold on.
Go ahead with your question or your comment, and please mute your line.
Let me try to. Yeah, okay, there it is. All right. My question is basically, it seems like it appears that all of the inmates that get in, and I agree that some are going to get it, some are not going to ever get out, and some are going to be able to get out. And if you do have programs that are able to educate these prisoners, but my question is this: do you not think that there is wrongful incarceration situations that has taken place, and there's wrongful incarcerations, wrongful sentencing? What is your thought process on that as a warden, and knowing that people are wrongfully incarcerated?
There's no way that a warden can tell whether or not the inmate is innocent for what they allegedly had committed. I would hate for anybody to be wrongfully accused and have to do 20 or 25 years only to find out that they found DNA 20 years later that exonerated them, and then they're released. Um, the criminal justice system, the court system, is the one that tries it and then sentences them. It's the warden's job to keep them. So as far as the warden know, they've all been through the criminal justice system and they were found guilty. But if I knew of an individual who was innocent, I would let the court know or let somebody know that this person is innocent. But there's no way that a warden would know whether or not this person was in fact innocent.
Let me ask you a question. In your opinion, this is strictly in your opinion, how many wardens in the state of Georgia were like you that you ran across in all actuality? And it's going to go link into my next question.
Maybe 5.
Out of how many prisons?
34.
That's a very low number. Unfortunately, it's very sad for the inmates.
Most of them don't like talking to the family members. Most of them think an inmate is the enemy. Most of them think that the inmate is a lowlife, second-rate citizen. Why should I do this for him when he murdered somebody? They look at the crime instead of the individual. And some of them were never exposed to, they never been poor. I come up from a family that was poor, welfare. I'm from the streets. So I made, I was different. I was like one of them. The only thing, I never got caught, so to speak. So a lot of them don't relate to the inmate. They just want to do their time. They're the warden. You're the inmate. You do what I tell you. That kind of thing. They don't have compassion. They don't have sympathy.
Now, my next question to you, and we're down to the nitty gritty, to like the last two. So if you guys have any questions or comments, start typing them now, because I'm going to go through them as soon as we get done with these next 2 questions. Would you ever give names of corrupt individuals, corrupt officials in the Georgia Department of Corrections, or assist in their prosecution to help reform the system that is constantly destroying our families and loved ones that are incarcerated when it's deceptive and destructive walls?
Yes. I called the Department of Justice myself, and I gave them names. I gave them dates. I gave them prisons. I gave them,
wonderful.
Yes, And you know, the Department of Justice told me that they're going to look into the allegations that I've made, and that if they're going to prosecute, that they're going to use me as a witness. So yes, I've done that.
Wow. And to loved ones as well as anybody connected, right, with DOC, if need be, call the Department of Justice or your family member. Call, because when it might have been something that maybe, and I'm just going to use you, Mr. Morales. Mr. Morales reported back in 2015, and then I report the same thing in 2025, right? Mr. Morales and I do not know each other from Adam, from a lick of paint. So if we turn around and we're saying the same story, it just builds a
It
case for
corroborates.
them. Yes. So understand that we do need you guys to continue reporting. I have no shame in saying that I will back up if I know that they're right and in the right, an inmate and a client, and go to whatever extremes it takes to make sure that that client knows that they're being protected because their rights are being violated for whatever the reason or whatever the allegation is, right? So just know that. So my next question is, would you be willing, as this is from like start with that, and I'm asking, okay? Would you be willing to come back and sit amongst a panel of people, panelists, for a discussion on how to combat this failing system?
On how to combat what?
This failing system
Yes.
in the state of Georgia. I
Yes.
really appreciate that. And we'll set up that interview. And anybody who would like to be a panelist that day, please contact us and we'll see. I won't be able to get everybody in, right? But we'll see who we can get in and be prepared for that. Now, is there anything else that you would like the listeners and the viewers to know that may have not have been addressed tonight?
I believe that if we can get a new commissioner, that things can change within the Department of Corrections. What's holding that department back right now is the commissioner, Mr. Timothy Ward.
Elections are coming up.
His leadership has failed. His leadership has created this situation where there's an increase in homicides. People are leaving the department. So if we can get a new commissioner, hopefully things within inside the department can change.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. You believe that Ward should be out of office. Do you, Kemp was the one that put him on there. Do you believe Kemp should be out of office in your opinion?
Kemp has failed. Mr. Kemp has done nothing for the criminal justice system. He has not held Mr. Ward accountable for the failure within the Department of Corrections. He has done nothing to make it better. He has done nothing to make it safe. He could call in the National Guard, where the prisons that are short and don't have anyone to monitor to make it safe, he could put National Guardmen in there. And he's failed to do that. So he's allowed the prison system to fall like it is, and he has done nothing to help with the shortages. Nothing at all. He's authorized pay raises, but that doesn't bring the people that you need in. And until we get more staff, why haven't you put somebody in their place? State trooper, somebody. He's allowed it to happen.
And I can agree with the sense with the part that you say short staff. I'll tell you, I've seen footage, which I'm going to ask a question about that, which we actually kind of went through yesterday. I want to ask you that actually. I got one more question. But one thing that I have noticed on these video footage is that a lot of times there's nobody there.
Exactly.
It's almost like they're all by themselves. So really, I think that they're just making the best out of what they can because
on some occasions,
some of those
there's
inmates
only
are animals.
3 people to monitor 1,800 man prison. 3 people show up.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to ask this question, and then I see that you have invited 2 other people in the background, and I'll let them say what they need to say briefly before getting off, because I don't want to keep everybody here all night. This was an incredible, incredible show tonight. I want to ask you, and I'm sure you've seen it, the footage that appeared at Hancock State Prison. And I'm mentioning Hancock State because that was just kind of like, are you really serious? I'm looking at the CO just stand there, and I'm looking at the other one just walk in. Did you see that footage?
Yes. You have some officers who are afraid to get involved. You have some of them that they will not, they don't want to get hurt. It's the inmate. Why should I get hurt? So they don't get involved, and they'll watch and let it happen. Cowards.
Now, that inmate saw the pool of blood on the floor, sitting there on the table. It seemed like the inmate from, I can imagine that was a cell, that's what it looked like, from his cell was more worried about his peer than was those COs.
Yeah.
That's a joke. Because the warden is the one that I blame for that, because is that fair to say? First of all, is that fair to say? Because wouldn't the orders go under the warden
for everything, but we still have to hold the officer accountable for failing to act. Some of them, when there's an incident, they freeze. They're in shock. And so their mind doesn't allow them to react. A lot of them are not combat veterans where we've seen combat and we act. Whenever there's a serious incident, they see the blood, their mind shuts down and they have tunnel vision. And it takes a few minutes for them to regain that they're in reality. They lose reality. And they become shocked. So what you're seeing is them in shock, and their body becomes stiff, and they become confused. And a lot of them have never been exposed to a crisis, so they don't respond as quickly as somebody that has experience, like a sergeant, a lieutenant, who has seen a crisis and they respond. And so a lot of them, they're from the street.
And see,
no training.
But if you look exactly, because I could imagine if that was somebody from the medical team, the reaction, you're trying to right away react. You see blood, you're going to help, you're going to wrap the wound, whatever it takes to save that life, right? Because that's what you take an oath for.
Some of them are 22 years old. They're young. They're kids.
Wow. I really don't think that anybody should get a job in that atmosphere that young. That's just my opinion. But we're all entitled to our own. Now, let me ask you a question that goes back. What isn't this, and we know it falls, but wouldn't this fall on the warden from that prison to make sure that, okay, if something like this happens, because I would have loved the inmate, and I really wish that every inmate would say, this has gone on for this amount of time. Because now we get a whole view of, it's been 5 minutes, it's been 10 minutes, it's been 1 minute. So we can say, okay, maybe it took a second to react. But if you're sitting there for 20 minutes bleeding and no one's doing anything, that person, if they die, what are you going to tell the loved one? You were just standing there? Because I'm sure
You got
that's
to
not what
hold
the
that
report's
officer
going to say.
accountable.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to write him up and charge him with failure to perform your duties. And even if it means charging him or her criminally for failing to act. But a lot of them, they freeze because they have never been exposed to a crisis like that. You know, seeing somebody's throat cut can put them in shock. And it's due to lack of training. You know, they don't cover everything in a 4-week academy. You know, they can't teach you everything. And a lot of them, you know, the turnaround rate is so high that most of the officers have less than 6 months of experience running these close security prisons. And most of them are women. 70% are women. And not to downplay women by no means, because they're the ones that are running our prison. Some of them just don't have the experience to respond. They just don't have it. And so when they see something that is so shocking that they just totally forget their role. And so they just don't respond. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth. They just don't have it in them to respond, to take control, grab the inmate, stop the bleeding, call the nurse, call the supervisor. They're in shock.
And so they have another question here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add who you had there to go ahead and make their statements. This one is, how do inmates and or their family members, what can they do for an open records request to get body camera contact if the officers
get a court order?
The inmate's dead body.
You're going to have to get a court order. Okay. To simply ask for it, it's not going to happen, because there could be incriminating scenes. And it's like Mr. Trump taking the fifth. They're not going to want to incriminate themselves. And so some of that footage will have incriminating activity on it. So if I give you incriminating information, you're going to use it against me in a civil or even a criminal. So the lawyers for the Department of Corrections will always tell the warden, don't give anything out. Make them get a court order demanding that we present it. Otherwise, we're not going to, because of some of that information could be incriminating. So I would tell them for their attorney to get a court order for them to get the footage, and you're gonna have to show some evidence that will warrant the judge to sign it over. In other words, you're gonna have to sue. And when you file that lawsuit, that is when the attorney can subpoena the incident reports, the witness statements, the footage of the camera that is already installed in the dormitory, and then the body camera footage that that was obtained from the officers on the scene. So it's always best get an attorney and file a lawsuit.
And also, We see a human justice organization does work with 2 or 3 attorneys. However, if there's any attorneys that are out there and willing, to work with these families and work with us, please feel free to contact us at WCU. We would love to collaborate and help these families as well as these inmates, as well as maybe if the correctional officer, whoever was involved, is innocent, their innocence being proven. So I'd like to make that disclaimer. I'm going to go ahead and add. Oh, they're not coming up. But you did have one of the people that you were there. This is what he wrote. His name is Jeremy. He wrote, "My loved one is in for vehicular homicide. One bad decision, drinking. He got 11 years in prison. The guideline states that 65% is the minimum time. That's 7.5 years for an accident. He's never been arrested before, college educated from a normal Christian family. This is very sad for both families involved." And then he wrote, "Lee, Raindale, they only see an officer twice a day. Twice a day. They're pretty much by themselves."
Where is with the shortages that are going on right now in these prisons, you're lucky if you see an officer.
That's insane. And that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous for, I hate to say this, but it's the truth. The prison could be taken over.
Easily.
And that's their own fault. That is their own fault.
Where State Prison, they took it over. 600 inmates were running loose during a riot.
And see, then you ask yourself, is it really, whose fault is it? Because I believe it starts from the top on
Mr.
down.
Ward.
Absolutely. Well, I
Governor
start with Kemp, and then, yes, and then on down. I totally agree with you. Guys, the elections are coming up. You know what to do. You know what to do. I've interviewed another candidate to give you guys the opportunity to look at it from a different perspective. I'm not into the whole politics. You never know which way I'm going to vote. I'm always going to vote for the people. But just make sure you get up and you vote. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? Because I'm about to head out now. Okay. So, Mr. Morales, I will contact you again. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you.
To break this down. And I know that this interview they're going to love, and I'm sure that they'll be contacting, if not you, the both of us, with even more questions. I really appreciate, you taking 2 hours of your time to sit here with Lunchtime with Anna and sit here with these viewers, loved ones, and whoever else logged in. I just really appreciate it because sometimes that's what we need. We need to hear from the other angle, right? Because I could speak to you guys from the human justice point of view. When it gets frustrating for us, we're trying to help and we can't. He gave us another point. I hear the inmate point. So, we get some of everything. You're very welcome. And with that being said, you guys have a wonderful day. I will air this again tomorrow, so I will reshare it. Share this with everybody that you can. Share it because it's the questions that I try to find harder questions. If there was anything, I gave you guys the opportunity to ask the questions because that's what it's about. Together we can make it. Again, don't forget to report to Department of Justice. I don't care from the warden on down. They're doing something wrong. Report. Tell your loved one to report them. Report them. Because you know what? At the end of the day, you're doing the right thing. And to me, I'm really big on integrity. I'm really big on truth. And I'm really big on doing the right thing. You can do those. We're friends forever. I promise you that. With that being said, we will see you guys next week. Lunchtime with Anna. Have a good one.
Thank you for having me. Good night, everybody.
Good night.